Hi, this is Cheryl Gallant, your Conservative Member of Parliament for the bow hunting riding of Renfrew-Nipissing-Pembroke. The Trudeau Liberals truly believe they are in a post-truth world. For radical progressives and socialists, facts don't matter. The only thing that matters to them are feelings. The Liberals felt like the people who joined the Freedom Convoy were unacceptable. That's why the Liberals felt justified in lying about the Emergencies Act. We've previously discussed how the Minister for Public Safety lied 9 times when he claimed it was the police who asked for the Emergencies Act. We learned last June that was a lie. The police never asked for it. When confronted with his bald-faced lie, the minister tried to get clever. He changed his story to say the police asked for the tools which only the Emergencies Act could provide. This week, we learned that not only did the police not ask for it, the RCMP commissioner actually wrote to the Public Safety Minister's office telling them it was not required. The Emergencies Act can only be invoked if current laws are insufficient. Well, the commissioner wrote, quote, "I'm of the view that we have not yet exhausted all available tools that are already available in the existing legislation," end quote. So the police did not ask for the Emergencies Act. The RCMP did not ask for the tools in the Emergency Act. In fact, the RCMP advised the government the Emergencies Act was not required. This is literally the opposite of what the minister initially claimed. This wasn't spin. This wasn't semantics. This was a minister of the Crown claiming up is down. What's really disappointing, but not surprising, is that Commissioner Lucky never spoke up when she knew the truth. Why would she cover for the government? Maybe because she knew the government had evidence against her too. That evidence came to light last Thursday. The Mass Casualty Commission in Nova Scotia released a partial recording of the call between the commissioner and the RCMP officers staff in Nova Scotia. The officers and staff told the commission Lucky was upset with them. She had asked to have them release details about the ongoing investigation, but the officers and staff decided against it. When this news broke, Lucky and the Liberals denied it. It was a he said, she said situation. Then we learned the call had been recorded, except it was claimed the recording had been deleted. Then, to the surprise of everyone, not the government, the tape recording was suddenly available last week. I encourage Canadians to listen to the call. Actually, I encourage Commissioner Lucky to listen to that recording. She should reflect on what she said and how she said it. She should resign. She tried to interfere in a criminal investigation to advance the political interests of the government. She has disgraced the institution. But because she did this on behalf of the Liberals, Trudeau had her back. The Liberals knew the tape would come out on Thursday evening. That's why Liberal ministers and Trudeau fanned out across the country to announce the Handgun Freeze was now in effect. Of course, that's what the paid-off legacy media ran as the top news story Friday. The Liberals had almost successfully buried a story about their disgusting, unethical, immoral behavior in exploiting a tragedy to push their radical gun control agenda. There was just one problem. The announcement wasn't completely true. People training to compete in the Olympics and those registered to carry a handgun for employment are exempt. Trudeau held his orchestrated press conferences to exercise an obscure exemption of the rules. The rules say that in order for a law to be in effect, there must be sufficient public exposure to the new law. The new law must be published in the Canada Gazette. Otherwise, the handgun freeze would not come into effect until November 9th, the date the next Canada Gazette is due to be published. Besides Mendicino, he said it was in effect, so it must be right. The Liberals could have waited until November 9th, then held a press conference. The Liberals could have come out last Friday and said the freeze would come into effect on November 9th. But then it would not have had the same impact and would not have buried the news of the tape recording. They just have to keep people confused enough until November 9th. Then it won't matter if there's an exemption and if the exemption is valid or not. And the legacy media is only too happy to help them with the proceeds of Facebook taxes coming their way. When Trudeau co-opts the media, Canadians lose trust. And the only thing which could damage trust in the media more would be for the media to lie and have the government fall for it, hook, line, and sinker. Which brings us to Bill C-18. The Liberals and their legacy media allies are working overtime to bury this news. Bill C-18, the Online News Tax Act, is a shakedown. The purpose of the bill is to take money from the profitable internet companies and give it the money to the unprofitable legacy media companies. The media claim that tech companies are profiting off their content. This is a lie. The tech companies are not profiting off the news media. If anything, tech companies are losing money subsidizing the news media. The tech companies make money selling you. Google and Facebook sell access to your eyeballs. Before the internet, newspapers and broadcasters had a monopoly on selling you to the advertisers. Bill C-18 is a fight between big tech and big media, and the only loser is the public. Last week, the Liberals, the NDP, and Bloc teamed up to cut off hearings into this bill. The bill targets Google and Facebook, but the Liberals wouldn't even let Facebook testify. Facebook is a big, rich, foreign company. They don't need our sympathy. But the fact that the Liberals and their socialist allies blocked the company from appearing tells us Trudeau has something to hide. C-18 is built on a lie. It's a lie made up by the news media lobby. If this bill is allowed to pass, it'll cement Canada's reputation as a fantasy winterland. Sadly, our descent into delusion may be too far gone. The only thing worse than having a government tell bald-faced lies is a government which starts to believe its own lies. Last week, I asked the Liberals if they'd listen to Canadians living on fixed incomes who face a terrible choice this winter. And take a look.
Member for Renfrew-Nipissing-Pembroke.
Mr. Speaker, last night I spoke to Bonnie from a remote part of my riding who lives with her retired husband. They paid $900 last year to heat their home with oil, and that was double the year before. They just learned their bill this year is going to be $2,400. On a combined income of $25,000 a year, that means they're going to have to eat crickets in order to eat and heat. When will this government stop hurting Canadians and cancel its plan to triple the carbon tax?
The Honourable Minister of Natural Resources.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I think it's very important to say to the honourable members across the House, climate change is real and it is an existential threat to the future of the human race. The Conservatives are proposing to make pollution free again, and now they are proposing to pick the pockets of the vast majority of Canadian families by taking away their quarterly rebate checks. This will make the climate crisis worse, it will drive away investment, and it will make everything more expensive. Mr. Speaker, our government will oppose Conservative political efforts to rob Canadians of this important financial support.
The Honourable Member for Northwest Territory.
Peace activist turned environment minister who answered. That was the Minister of Natural Resources. He's supposed to be the reasonable one around the cabinet table. And he just said, climate change is an existential threat to humankind. If I thought he was just being hyperbolic, I wouldn't bat an eye. Sometimes elected officials use hyperbole as a rhetorical technique, occasionally. But when this particular minister says he thinks climate change will end all human life on this planet, it seems like he genuinely believes that. And that should terrify every Canadian. We've already seen with the Emergencies Act, the Liberals will do anything if they think the ends justify it. Well, What if you believe climate change is going to cause the extinction of the human race? If the government has deluded itself into believing climate change is the end of the world, then they can justify letting a few seniors freeze to death this winter. When our Indigenous cousins first started migrating to North America, the land Parliament sits on was under 2 kilometers of ice. As a reference point, the ice wall in the Game of Thrones is 200 meters high. So picture that, but 10 times higher. And remember, human eyes bore witness to it. Humankind reached every continent except for Antarctica, and we did it with stone tools. According to the United Nations, sea levels could rise by 2 meters by the end of the century. And at the end of the last ice age, a lake covering much of Canada drained when the ice dam released. Global sea levels rose by 2 meters in weeks. Humanity has seen sea levels change by hundreds of meters. We've seen temperature changes of 5 degrees or more, and we're still here. Only now we have better tools. And instead of there being a few million of us spread out across the world, there are 8 billion people, and we're more interconnected than ever. Despite what Hollywood would have you believe, climate change is not the equivalent of an extinction-level asteroid. Sadly, way too many people have come to believe the climate apocalypse. Worst of all, those sitting around the cabinet table making life and death decisions believe it. Liberals have deluded themselves into believing their carbon tax will literally save the world. So far, we haven't met our emissions targets, even with all this pain. Right now, they are willing to sacrifice low-income seniors on the altar of climate change. As our carbon tax continues failing to reduce emissions, they'll become even more zealous. Who will they sacrifice then? Live from Ottawa, this is Cheryl Gallant.